We have breaking news right now from downtown LA. A federal grand jury has declared a mistrial in the Palisades Fire arson trial. Let's go live to a press conference happening right now.
But I was very confident going into this that the government would fail to prove their case, and they did. They failed miserably. They didn't even come close. And if they want to retry it again, we can retry it again. If Bill O'Saley wants to cheerlead from the sidelines, maybe he should come in and try the case himself next time.
Do you think the government's repeated losses in last few trials?
I'm sorry? It's a great question. A lot of media was questioning the defense strategy on not bringing in the fire department. Obviously, that would have been the best defense we had. We had a pretrial ruling that we were not to reference the Los Angeles Fire Department negligence, which there was obvious negligence in not putting out the Lockman fire. That will be for the civil attorneys to decide, but the judge did not allow us to talk about that at trial.
Can that change the second time?
No, it won't change. There'll be very little change in the second trial with respect to the evidence and the proofs and what we'll do tactically. And I think we'll have a better result than the first trial. 10-2 is an overwhelming message from the jury that the government failed and did not have enough evidence to prove their case.
Would your client consider a deal presented by?
Absolutely no deal. They're not going to offer one. We're not going to have any conversations. He didn't do it. I'm sorry? You know, it mixed emotions. You know, anytime you get a hung jury, some attorneys look at that as a victory. A 10-2, decision is also pretty resoundingly favorable for the defense. But the family's encouraged at least that a jury of his peers listened to the evidence and found that the government did not prove their case.
Why is the government so concerned about a flight risk if he doesn't have a passport?
That's a great question. He hasn't had a passport for years. There's no way he can flee anywhere. The suggestion that he can drive to Mexico, anybody can drive to Mexico. I don't think that necessarily means you're a flight risk. And Jonathan has no criminal record. He's never been charged with a crime or convicted of a crime. So, but I understand the judge's decision, and I'm not going to question her decision.
Have you had a chance to talk with any of the jurors about what led them to their position?
I personally did not speak to any of the jurors. I had some that were very emotional that came up to me after the trial, that hugged me, and they were very clear that they were frustrated with the two holdouts. It was the 10 that were very much committed to not guilty. They were frustrated with the two that were not. So I don't think further deliberations would have moved the needle and resulted in an acquittal. Otherwise, we would have advocated for further deliberation. But it was clear they were deadlocked. The foreman was unequivocal about that. And a 10-2 vote is extremely clear how the jury felt about the case.
Will you try to, would it be normal?
I can't hear you.
Will you try to seek out and talk to the jurors, understand what they're...
I've never in 200 jury trials sought a juror out to speak to them. If they want to speak with me, they can contact me, and I'd love to hear what they think. But at the end of the day, I look at it as a jury as a unified group who has a voice. And this unified group spoke loudly that this case was not good, and it wasn't good from the very beginning. It wasn't good when it was charged, and it wasn't good when they came back with their hung jury.
You said during the opening statement, I think, something to the effect of, okay, maybe spray fireworks at the Lockman fire, and that maybe there's an arsonist still on the loose who set the Palisades.
Look, at the end of the day, the fact that the fire happened right after midnight on New Year's Eve, if anybody thinks that's just a coincidence, then they have not lived in Southern California very long or anywhere else in America. The timing of when the fire occurred, I think the jury had a hard time thinking that was a coincidence. When fireworks are going off, there's multiple witnesses at trial. And if you recall, Bill O'Saley at a press conference said there was no evidence of fireworks in the Palisades on January 1st. We had a number of witnesses who disagreed, who testified at trial. Not only were there fireworks in the Palisades on January 1st, they saw 4 kids running down the hill after the fire started. So who do you think set the fire, Jonathan or the 4 kids running down the hill after the fire started? I believe that was one of the issues the jury had with the case.
Do you think the DOJ's recent losses in court contribute to Bill O'Saley's want for a retrial?
You know, I'm not political. I don't care about Bill O'Saley. He can cheerlead from the sideline, and he wasn't even at the trial. I don't think he came into the courtroom one day during the trial. So for him to have a strong opinion about anything means absolutely nothing to me, and we'll see him again in October.
What about the bill? What about the bail? What about bail?
Bail was addressed by the judge. I don't question the judge's rulings. I understand why she made the ruling, and I respect it.
Why did they not test the lighter, but they tested cigarettes 5 more times?
That's a great point. We made it during the closing argument. If the lighter started the fire, why didn't you do a test of the lighter? Why did you do cigarette tests when the cigarette you ruled out as the cause of the fire? So, look, there's a lot of points made during the trial that we'll remake at the retrial, and we'll go from there.
Hey, Steve, could they try to do that? Could the government then try to do that test now, or is it too late?
No, they're limited to the evidence they had at the first trial, and they will put on a very similar case. I don't expect it'll change much materially, and I think we'll put on a similar defense, and I wouldn't gather there'll be a different outcome. Tended to, as I said, is a resounding defeat to the government, and it was very close to a full acquittal on all 3 charges, not one, on all 3.
Thank you.
I don't even want to guess how much money was spent. You were at the trial, you saw the technology, you saw the exhibits, you saw the resources they have. It's the United States government, it's the richest government in the world, and yeah, they definitely put a lot of money into this case.
Can the government try him with a different charge?
I'm sorry? Yeah, there was evidence at trials. Anybody else have any questions? No. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Yep.
Bail hearing?
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
You've been listening to Steve Haney, the attorney for Jonathan Rinderknecht. He's the man accused of setting what eventually became the Palisades Fire. You heard that there was a deadlock jury. 10 jurors said on not guilty, 2 wanted to convict. But again, a mistrial declared in this arson case, and prosecutors have said they will try again. We will, of course, continue to follow the case. A judge has ordered the arson suspect detained until the October retrial.